Hello everyone. I'm Neelam here. I'm working as a Atal FDP coordinator at IGTR Indo-German Tool Room Ahmedabad. Your two-day session is conducted by Mr. Tejas Dunake. He is our external invited faculty from industry. So before starting of the session, I would like to give some introduction of him. So Mr. Tejas Dunake is the owner of High Tech Automation Pune. He is in the business of manufacturing CNC machine, robots, automobile, PLC and SCADA. So we heartily welcome sir and thankful to him. He has a vast experience in this field, and it is our pleasure that he accept our invitation and give his lecture. So sir, I heartily welcome you. Sir, you may start your session, sir.
Thank you very much, Neelam ma'am, for the generous introduction. So, good afternoon to everyone, and I would like to thank IGTI for this opportunity. I'd just like to brief you of what exactly we do here. So, we are in a very niche market of industry as well as the education. So, we are associated with robotics as well as the industrial automation, and we are also providing robotic training kits to educational industry, not only in India but all over the world. So I'll start my session. I think you have already gone through a brief introduction of our company, which is High Tech Automation. So the today's topics of the presentation would be the robotics, the background of robotics. I'm very well aware that you have already gone through the history and everything, but just to before venturing into our core subject, just like to brief you about the background that what we feel in industry is very much valid. Then the second part is kinematics of robots, and the third part is the drive systems. So starting with the history, as you see, the first robot, the sources of this history varies a lot. So in any presentation, you might see different years and a different timeline for this, but we generally follow is IFR, International Federation of Robotics. So the first robot was developed in the year 1959, and just to give you the idea of that robot, which was actually able to lift 2 kgs of payload, was weighing 2000 kgs. So nowadays, a robot which can lift 12 kg weighs around 24 kgs. So that is the difference. That is the improvement. That is the technology where it is moving right now. In 1961, the first robot was installed in General Motors, and in 2011, the first robot, the humanoid, actually went into the space from NASA. So the industry is moving very fast, and this next slide, I'm going to explain why this robotics is nowadays important, why everyone is talking about this. So there is a big concept, especially in educational industry or even in the human resource industry, that robots are going to cut down the jobs of our people. India being highly populous country, robots is something that we cannot afford because eventually people will lose jobs. So that has not been the case. If you see the statistics of China or US or any developing country for that matter,
मेरा सेशन
robots.
कंप्लीट हो गया तो फिर आप बोलना कि माई सेल्फ कमल कौर फ्रॉम इंडो जर्मन.
So the robots have actually been highly influential in increasing the productivity and not reducing the jobs either. So the robots work in collaboration with people, increasing the efficiency, increasing the quality, increasing the standard of work that we are doing. So according to IFR, there is a steep rise in the automation of production all over the world. The region-wise average robot density. So average robot density, when we call it, it is generally a robot per 10,000 employees. So all over the world, the average currently in the year 2017, this data was published in the year 2019. So by the end of 2017, the density was 74 robots per 10,000 employees. This I am talking about all over the world. The region wise in UK, USA and Asia is 99, 84 and 63 respectively. So if you see the growth of the country, I mean, as the country grows, definitely the number of robots, the density of robots is going to increase. In India, I mean, if I jump to India right now, the density of robots is very, very less. So per 10,000 employees, yes, I'll just jump to that. Okay, so India is emerging country. I mean, we are venturing into the production now. Our prime minister is talking about make in India and all these things. So we are venturing into that. We are way behind most of the countries which are already into manufacturing. So yeah. So as of now, India has around 85 robots per 10,000 employees. The average robot density, the average robot density in India is 3 robots per 10,000 employees, which is very, very less. This gap has to be reduced. So our government is taking a lot of actions in this aspect. So if we have to increase the productivity, the robots are going to play a very critical role in this. So there are a lot of organizations such as IGTR, even GTTC, even most of the top institutions are being are the government is asking them to venture into this robotics to train the manpower, which would eventually be necessary to operate the robots. Because installing the robot is very easy, maintaining that robot, to program it is very difficult. So that is where the India is moving. And in next 10 years, I think, in my personal opinion, we will be competing with China, especially in the manufacturing sector. And that is where we are going to have a need of industrial automation. So a robot is not necessarily a six-axis robot that you see in videos or in different types of movies and all. A robot can be a very small single-axis movement as well. So in industrial automation language, a travelator which we see on airports is also considered as a single-axis robot. Anything that moves automatically through an actuator is called as a robot. So we have a concept of robot means a six-axis, a very big robot standing on a pedestal which can carry 400, 500 kg. It is not like that. Even for human movement, whatever we use, it can be termed as a robot. So moving on to the next subject that I want to cover is robot kinematics. So what exactly is the kinematics and why it is important? So kinematics is the study of relationship between robots' joint coordinates and its spatial layout.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Sir, you have told that for every 10,000 we have 3 robots. That means you are talking about the current situation of India, that in India we are having like this. Okay, that means more or less we can just relate to this also. So this is the present situation, that this much of robotics we are using in India.
Yes. 10,000 employees. For every 10,000 employees, we are having 3 robots.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So I'll share this presentation as well. So there is a entire data is available there. The reason that we have so less robots is because the manpower is very high. That means we have got the number of people working in India is much higher as compared to UK or US. That's the reason our this ratio has gone down substantially. Even China is not the best. China is, I guess, number 10 or number 13 right now. So that particular ratio has a lot to do with the population of the country as well. So moving into the kinematics. So kinematics can yield very accurate. Yes, ma'am.
Sir, what is the reason behind that we are not advancing in this field? It is due to the unemployment situation it will create due to the high population. Is it so, or we are not well versed with it, or we don't have the technology, or what you say, the things to manufacture robots? What is the actual reason why we are lagging behind?
Ma'am, to answer your first question, firstly, India is a growing country, so economics is going to be a big part of it. So any small company first thinks that why would I invest 30-40 lakhs in a robot when I can hire 3-4 more employees? I have to pay hardly 1,000 rupees a day to them. So why would I invest like that? The second part is, as you correctly mentioned, do we have the enough expertise to maintain the robot? Manufacturing is not a problem because all over the world, robots are not being manufactured. There are few countries like Japan and Germany, which are the hub for the robot manufacturing. So Fanuc, which is by far the number one by volume in world for robot manufacturing, entire robot manufacturing is done in Japan. So in Fanuc, robots manufacture robots. There is no human intervention. Same is the case with KUKA, which is from Germany. So technology is not a problem. Affordability is not a problem, because in India, most of the big giant companies like Maruti, Honda and all, they are venturing into this. We are talking about the small manufacturing units which can be benefited by the installation of robots, but they are not venturing into it. First is economics, and the second is not having enough confidence on their manpower. There are a lot of factors which come into this, and slowly, if we want to increase the production, they are not going to cut the jobs. They are going to help you to have a better production rate at a better quality. So in India, even in smaller sector, we are seeing people investing a lot of amount for welding applications, because they cannot rely on the human skills. That is where now we are slowly moving, because human welding can be a problem at the end of the day. You can't be sure about it. You cannot invest more and more into QA and QC. So slowly we are moving there, but all.
Sir, you have.
Yes.
Sir, how can you justify that when we incorporate robot in our industry, will it not affect the number of persons working, or will it not give rise to the unemployment situation? How can you justify this?
Justify that, I'll give you the historical data, because as the Chinese robot installations went on increasing, their employment rate was higher. They could produce more, they could sell more at a better quality. There are two aspects of it. You can look at it as a robot doing the job of a man, or robot working in collaboration with a man. So there are two aspects of it. I have never seen a robot working entirely on its own, except when it is installed in a paint shop. There are humans required to work alongside a robot.
But in a lesser number. What the company is employing, for example, the company is employing 100 persons for the job, and if the robot came, if the robot come into existence in that company, that means maybe 50% will be required, because can it be possible? I means whatever I think so.
I don't think I'm in a position to deny that, but I'll just like to give you one example. When CNCs came into the picture, CNC is the computerized numerical control. Okay, so we used to have normal turning machines and milling machines, which are used for the metal cutting operations. Everyone thought that they are going to cut the jobs of the humans. It didn't happen that way. Actually, it increased the production rate. So you could develop a program, you can design a program, you could get a job with a better accuracy, with a better quality, better finish at a better rate. So what I'm saying is, if we are manufacturing 10 things at a time right now, say if we talk about Maruti, if we are manufacturing 10 Marutis in a year, you can manufacture 20 Marutis with the help of robots with a better quality. Then the owners would rely on the selling them. So we expect in a steady state, the sell will increase. That is how a country will grow. If you have to grow, you'll have to sell more. To sell more, you'll have to have some kind of help at your end. That would be from the robots. So maybe we are not.
Maybe this is the reason that our country is not employing this type of robots in the company, because the normal person, as I was thinking, that robot will cut the job, will give rise to the unemployment situation. Maybe this type of myth is there, which is hindering us in the progress of the robotics in our country. Maybe, I think so.
Very true, ma'am. I completely agree with you. But in my opinion, the biggest hindrance is not of a mindset, but that is of the qualified manpower to take care of the robots. So even in industry, we face a lot of problems from the even bigger companies, giant companies, which do not have a right kind of manpower or the application engineering person who could solve the problem. That means if a robot goes down, you have installed a robot who is manufacturing or doing a spray painting in a paint shop. If it goes down, that becomes a bottleneck of the entire plant. If you cannot rectify it within 2, 3, 4 hours, then you are losing tremendous amount of money. So people do not want to take that risk. Once they're assured that if my robot goes down, I'll get a service in 10 minutes, or my person is capable enough to handle it within half an hour, then yes, they might go ahead with it.
That is the type of job changes. First of all, the manpower was required And here, due to the installation of robot, manpower comes down. Number of person may be come down, but we need programmer for it. We need maintenance persons for it. So that is the number of person will be more or less same, but the job criteria will differ.
No, ma'am. Just to give you an idea, so we are into manufacturing sector. If I want to compete with a company from Germany, I have to make sure that if I'm manufacturing 100, say, units of some part, okay, I am manufacturing 100 parts and I'm competing with a German company. I have to make sure that my quality is going to remain the same. It might be better, it might be worse, but it will be the same. So in case if my quality is not good enough, I'm going to lose the contract. But my quality is good, I might get 1,000 jobs in place of 100. So I'm expecting with the application of robots, I might increase the pie size. That means right now I'm manufacturing 100 units with better quality, with better production, and I might be able to sell 1,000 units in place of 100. That's what China has done. China, if you see the history of China, they have not increased the salaries, or they have not increased the number of the variations in their manufacturing sector. Overall output of the country has gone up because now they are selling to India, now they are selling to Russia, they are selling to US, they are selling everywhere. So this is what right now we are talking about, being Atmanirbhar, that is catering for only India, would be a giant step for us. After that, we might think about competing with China in the global sector. That is something which we can do. And that is what we'll be thinking 10 years down the line. So that means if we are manufacturing 100 Maruti cars, we do want to manufacture 1,000 Maruti cars. And for that, I'm not going to need the help of the robots.
Yeah, got it, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. So when we talk about robots, the kinematics plays a very important role in the selection of a robot. Kinematics can yield very accurate calculations in many problems, such as the positioning of the end effector. If I want to position and my end effector is something which is placed at the end of the robot, which will either pick or place, which will have a welding gun, which will have a spray gun, anything which we call it as an end effector. If I want to move that end effector from point A to point B, this kinematics will give me the exact path of my motion. In a robot, I can decide how I want to move my different axes. So there are different links. There can be 6-axis robot, 7-axis robot, or maybe 8-axis manipulator. So how I want to move my each and every link so that there is no collision with the outside objects. That matters a lot. So that is calculated by the kinematics. So kinematics is concerned with only the instantaneous values of robot coordinates. That means at any given time, at any given moment, the coordinates of each axis will finally calculate your kinematics motion. It ignores the movement under the forces or torques which are generally covered in dynamics. That means any force on a robot, if it has lifted something, if it is doing a welding, then that particular force is not calculated in kinematics. That goes into an entirely different field, which is called as robot dynamics. So we'll focus only on the forward kinematics and the reverse kinematics. The kinematics problem may be...
Sir, if we have to define kinematics in a very simple way, can we do that like this? It's a simple motion of a robot with the full coordination so that the limbs or the links will not collide with each other. It's a simple motion without the force.
Yes, ma'am. In next 2 slides, I've explained that. I'll just go there. I'll show you what exactly kinematics means in the very simple way.
Exactly, the kinematics. I think kinematics is a physics term. So what does it mean? Kinetic energy, somewhat it is something coming from the kinetic energy.
I'm not very sure the origin of this term, but in this, what you mentioned in the first was the kinematics is something that the coordinates that all the links of a robot will follow to move from point A to point B. That is the kinematics.
Without the force. Without the force.
Without the external force, without the calculation of dynamics.
What dynamics, sir?
Dynamics in the sense the torque or when it is moving, any force that is acting, maybe inertia or the torque or any external resistance, that will not be calculated.
Yeah, without resistance. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay, I'll move ahead. So the kinematics, the analytical study of the geometry of motion of a mechanism. Mechanism in the sense it is a robot. It can be any mechanism. So the analytical study of the geometry of the motion of that particular mechanism. So this is with respect to a fixed reference coordinate system. So we have a fixed reference coordinate system. With that, we are going to analyze everything. And again, as I mentioned, without regard to the forces or moments that cause the motion. So if it is with the electrical motor, if it is moving at some higher speed, the inertia or any mr omega square we call it, that is not being considered in kinematics. In order to control and program a robot, we must have knowledge of both its spatial arrangement is where it is kept. So how far the other objects are, where it has to reach, at what point it has to pick up the load. That means I define a robot with its payload capacity. I say my robot has a 12 kg payload. That means it is able to lift 12 kg. But at entire its range of motion, it is not capable to lift 12 kgs. So depending on the spatial coordinates, depending on the geometry, depending on the kinematics, its payload capacity will keep on changing. So that is where the study of kinematics come into the picture. Here, this sounds a little trivial, critical, but every robot comes with a software which will tell you at what point the payload capacity is, at what point your speed would be, at what point your acceleration should be. So this is an open chain manipulator. Open chain in the sense.
Sir, payload capacity is how much weight the robot can take. So the
Yes.
payload capacity of the robot depends upon the limbs or the links and the joints. They are totally
Yes.
dependent, and it affects the speed also. If the robot has to do the hard load things, then the
Yeah.
speed
So
will be low.
yeah, generally, what happens is, ma'am, this is works in the reverse way. Like robot manufacturers decide the speed of the robot. So he expects user to operate at that speed. So once the speed is fixed, they'll calculate the total payload capacity. That means if my speed is say 10 meter per second, that is the maximum speed, then my entire robot will be designed with that particular speed in my mind. So what I'm trying to tell you is, this is kind of a factor of safety. You are not going to run the robot at 10 meter per second at all the time. You might run it at 5 meter, but my design is based on that speed at that capacity.
Yes, it's a maximum speed written.
Yeah, maximum speed return. Yes, correct.
Yeah.
So this is the base. So if you see, the first one is the length, then mechanics of manipulator can be represented as a kinematic chain of rigid bodies connected by revolute or prismatic joints. I guess you have gone through the different types of joints. So what exactly is revolute, which revolves? Then the second one is prismatic, which moves in a linear direction. That is called as a prismatic. At the end of the presentation, again, I have explained this, how exactly this works when we go into the drives. One end of this chain, when this is an open chain, one end of the chain is constrained to a base, while other end effector is while on the other end effector is mounted. So this is the general most commonly used robot. We call it as articulated robot. This is the structure of a most commonly used articulated robot, open link mechanism. This way you can achieve the maximum reach. So when I finalize a robot,
Articulated robot is RR. So that means it is moving in all the three axes.
yes, that depends. Articulated is actually a structure of a robot. Generally, any joint, articulated robot will have joints and links. Any joint will have a revolute motion. So there is no prismatic motion. Generally, in most of the commonly used articulated robots, there won't be a prismatic motion. There will only be a revolute motion.
But excuse me, sir. Sorry to disturb you. In an articulated robot, earlier class, we heard that there are three linear sliding axes will take into action. That is what we understood in the
Can be
previous
possible.
session.
Can be possible.
That's what.
See, this is, I'm not talking about it's possible or not possible. It is possible. I'm talking about most of the commonly used articulated robots. So once I move ahead, I'll show you a few videos where you'll get a very clear idea of how an articulated robot works.
Okay, sir.
So generally in articulated robot, we call it a J1, J2, J3, J4, J5, J6. Most of the commonly used industrial robots are 6-axis articulated robots. So the reach and payload capacity depends on these joints. So this is a closed kinematic chain. So in this becomes very critical because each link is connected with the other link. So each joint, once it moves, it will have to take care of the other 3 joints of the fixed position as well. So this becomes a closed kinematic chain. So there are different equations, there are different formulae by which you have to calculate the kinematics of this closed chain. So kinematics versus a differential kinematics. So kinematics describes the analytical relationship between the joint position and the end effector position and orientation. That means if I move my J1.
Sir, excuse me, what is closed kinematic? I haven't got that.
That means the other end of the chain is also fixed. If I move my J1, that is joint 1 of my this closed chain, my end effector, my end of the chain will not move freely because it is fixed to a particular position. If you see this, my end effector, my link 3, end of my link 3 is free. So as I move my link 1, my link 3 will move very freely. Here in this case, it is not possible. It will depend on, so my link, once I move my link 1 and link 2 will manage in such a way that link 3 is fixed.
So in the closed figure, so can you please next slide? So in this figure, the so next slide, please.
Yeah, this previous one. Okay.
Sir,
please next slide.
Excuse me, sir. Can we have the question session till later? Because it breaks our concentration. You please have the content delivery because it breaks our concentration. We can have the question answer session. It's very difficult for us to focus again and again.
Yeah. What I'll do is, ma'am, after 2:30 we'll keep the question answer session and we'll go back to any slide that
by one person only, sir. Too many.
Yeah, ma'am. Too many questions.
And it's breaking our concentration.
Ma'am, we can make a note of the slide number and then we can come back after 2:30 and we can answer all the questions, ma'am.
I can relate to
yes, sir. The link, we are not able to concentrate, sir.
So I'll move ahead. So here, if you see the basic concept of the kinematics, if I move my joint 1, my end effector is going to move. At the same time, when you have 6 joints, movement of each joint is going to affect the position of my end effector. So in differential kinematics, the speed of the movement of the joints is going to affect my end effector. So this speed, especially in the robotics programming, matters a lot. If you want to achieve a particular position at a particular accuracy, this differential kinematics plays a very, very important role. I'm not going into the details of how to calculate everything and all, but this speed for every joint is different because in articulated robot, my base axis will have the maximum capacity motor. That is my strongest axis. I go to my J6, that is going to be my weakest axis. Because if you see the construction, I'll show you a video, you'll immediately understand there is not enough space, there is not enough, there are a lot of constraints by which a manufacturer cannot put a high capacity motor there. So depending on my motor capacity, depending on my reach of the robo, speed of each joint is defined. So I'll show you a selection criteria as well later in the presentation where you'll understand how to calculate that. So when we say kinematics, that all depends on my frames. So robot is working in three-dimensional space. There is no fixed coordinate system. That means whenever I buy a robot, I get a robot with a CG, center of gravity. This RCF, what you see here, it is called as a robot coordinate frame. That means whenever I buy a robot from a factory, my coordinates are dependent on this RCF. That means this point RCF is 0, 0, 0. Any movement from that will be seen, will be taken into consideration. But I want to program it somewhere where you can see the job. So if I want to move my coordinate system, move my robo according to my job, then what I'll do is I'll define a new coordinate system, which I'm calling as OCF, object coordinate frame. So my 0, 0, 0 lies at the corner of this particular job. So that way it becomes easier for the programmer to program it. And from there, we can find out all the necessary limitations of a robot. There are different types of coordinate system. One is the world coordinate system. That means if you want to, you can define your workspace, say 3 meters by 3 meters. Depending on that, you can define your WCF. RCF, robot coordinate system, comes with robot. That is where the CG of the robot lies. Tool coordinate system. Tool is nothing but the end effector. My end effector can be anything. My end effector can be a handling a gripper. My end effector can be a spray gun or a welding gun or anything I want to achieve with the robot. Depending on that, I can have a vacuum or anything like that. So where it lies becomes my tool coordinate system. This tool is mounted. Just I'll show you one picture. Give me a moment. See. This on the left hand side, what you see, that is where the tool is mounted. The left hand picture where the 0, 0 is mentioned. So there, this particular system becomes my tool coordinate system. And at the end of my tool becomes my T0 coordinate system. Move back. So depending on the tool, because programming of a robot is a very difficult job, we are working with a 6-dimensional space. That means X, Y, Z, A, B, C. The number of axes will define the number of coordinates. So there are 6 coordinates which we want to define. So that becomes very, very difficult. And the collision can create a lot of problems. So this is how you have to define the coordinate system, and then you have to work accordingly. Any coordinate frames, that means all these coordinate frames are related to each other because they are going to move in the same way. Only thing, my reference point is going to change. So with a kinematics, you can relate each frame to another. There is again a calculation with the 4x4 matrix. You can carry out the entire calculation to find out the coordinates. So we move into the kinematic model. So a kinematic model describes the motion of a robot in mathematical form without considering the forces, external forces. In the kinematic model of a robot, the connection of different manipulator joints is known as link. And the integration of 2 or more links is called as a joint. Where 2 or more links connect, it is called as a joint. This kinematic model can be represented as a tree structure. The tree is nothing but a kinematic chain. So I'll move into that. This is how a robot works. So the base link, then your joint comes, then another link, then L2, joint 3, L3, joint 4. So this generally, I mean, a manufacturer can manufacture anything that he wants, but most of the robots that even on the left hand side, which you see a picture, all the joints are revolute joints. So we call it as it rotates. Every joint rotates. There is no prismatic joints, and this is the most commonly used robot. You take any manufacturer, this is going to be the most commonly used robot. If you have a specific application, you can manufacture anything you want. But generally in the industry, any of the automobile companies, you will find this kind of a robot there. For welding, for handling, for pick and place, most of the robots are like this only. So robot links. Robot links are solid mechanical elements. Depending on the kinematic model, movement of a certain input links allows the output links to move at various positions. Robot joints. The joints are the elements in the robot which help the links to travel in different kind of movements. So there are 3 types of joints which have you have already been through. The revolute, which rotates, the prismatic, a sliding joint, then fixed. Generally, the base of a robot is fixed. So that is a fixed joint. So the forward kinematics and the reverse kinematics. So we have discussed the whatever kinematics we have discussed, that is actually the forward kinematics. The forward kinematics function calculates the pose of the robot's end effector from joint states. If I'm going to move my joint.
Excuse me, your slide is only showing coordinate frames. Have you changed the slide or it's my screen only? On the screen, coordinate.
No, ma'am, it's showing forward kinematics and inverse kinematics.
Refresh, please.
Yeah.
Is it okay? I mean, can everyone see the forward and inverse kinematic slide?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes,
We're all able to see it. Yes. Very clear.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ma'am, there seems to be a problem with your connection. You'll have to check it out because I'll just move ahead with this. So yeah, the simplest way to calculate forward kinematics is based on the properties defined by the robot model. That means a robot manufacturer is going to give you all the details related with the links as well as the joints, because that is what he has designed. So with kinematics, you can find out if I move my J1, where my end effector would be, because you are going to be concerned only with the position of my end effector. You are not really bothered about my J1 or J2 or J3 movements. This end effector, if I have to move from point A to point B, what kind of movement I want to give it to my J1, J2, J3, J4, J5, J6. That is what kinematics will decide. Inverse kinematics. So inverse kinematics is little critical. So there are different types of coordinates which we follow. We call it as world coordinate system, as I mentioned to you. The coordinate systems, they are to be defined while you program a robot. That means you say world coordinate system. Generally, wherever you have your zero position, that will not move. So all other axes will keep moving, but robot will be standstill. That is the world coordinate system. You go to T0CF, tool coordinate system, that tool will remain standstill and all other axes will keep moving. I understand it's a little difficult to imagine right now, but I might have a video in which I would be able to show you. So the inverse kinematics is the inverse function of forward kinematics. The inverse kinematics function calculates the joint states required for the end effector to achieve a particular position. We go into reverse direction. Yes. Sure, to give you an idea of how, I mean, in forward kinematics, you move J1, J2, J3, where your end effector will reach. That is how we calculate. In inverse kinematics, you have to move from A to B. So how we are going to move all your 6 axes? We are focusing mainly onto the articulated robot with all 6 joints. So this is, I mean, I'll just show you the different types of robots and how the box you see is their working range. It's a Cartesian robot. In the next lecture, I have explained in detail of how these affect, what kind of different robots do we have in the industry. So this is the Cartesian robot. This is the gantry, which most of you have seen in the car garages and all. We do see gantries. A cylindrical robot, which has a base axis as a rotary axis. The envelope you see is the working range of that robot. The next one is the sphere. Sphere is very rarely used in industry, very, very rarely used, because there are a lot of maintenance issues with this. Any spherical joint does not last much. So most of the bigger manufacturers are not manufacturing cylindrical robots, sphere robots, or Cartesian or gantry robots. All over the world, the biggest manufacturers like KUKA, ABB, Fanuc, they only manufacture either SCARA or the Cartesian robots. This is the SCARA which I was talking about. This SCARA is used for high-speed applications. I have a video of that. I'll show you. This anthropomorphic is again a spherical robot in collaboration with a cylindrical robot. Again, a very critical robot to manufacture. So when I had said that the robot manufacturer gives you all the details for the selection of a robot. So this is how a particular robot selection looks like. Every link along with every joint and speed of that particular joint is provided. So depending on your requirement, there are a lot of softwares through which, if you have to pick up a job from 1000 mm, which is 1000 millimeters away, then depending on that, you can put all these conditions in a software and it will tell you which robot to select. So this is how any industrial robot selection looks like. They give you the reach, they give you the payload, and then with the kinematics, you have to find out what kind of robot I want. So this is an articulated robot, most commonly used. I guess I had a earlier question that in articulated robot there can be a prismatic movement as well. There can be, but this is what you will mostly see in industry. The red colored motors which you see are the servo motors, which are connected for each and every joint. When you have a motor, generally 90% of the times it is a rotary motion. Here the end position is achieved by moving J1, J2, J3, J4, J5, J6 in a rotary direction. I mean in a rotary movement. So this is what is used in most of the industries, paint shop, spray shop, anywhere. This is the most commonly used robot. This is a Cartesian robot. This is generally manufactured depending on the requirement, a specific requirement. That means there is no mass production of this. If I have a factory, if I have a particular application for which I need to design something, then yes, this can be done. But this is again not as, I mean, if my Cartesian robot percentage is 99%, then my articulated robot volume is 99%, Cartesian robot would be 0.1%. That is the density of these robots. Then this is a cylindrical robot. Cylindrical robot is nothing but an Cartesian robot with base as a rotary axis. So it can cover 360 degrees, a Cartesian robot which can cover 360 degrees motion. A polar robot which generally has one or two axes with a rotary motion. Again, very, very rarely used. It is
excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I'm not able to see anything on the screen. So is it my problem or right now I'm able to see. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Sir, please can you just see that Cartesian robot once again? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So I'm going to show you the video as well. Cartesian, since we are going back to this slide, I'll tell you this Cartesian robot, there is no interpolated movement most of the times. That means it has got mostly 3 or 4 axes and one axis will move at a time. This is generally programmed like x-axis 10 mm, y-axis 5 mm, z-axis 15 mm. So it will keep on following this routine. Whereas in articulated robot, you have to have point A to point B and where all 6 axes will move at a time. I'll show you a video of this. It will give you a very clear picture. This is the SCARA robot. SCARA is one of the fastest robots. Generally, it is 3 axis or 4 axis, but the working envelope of this robot is very small. As you can see, the extreme right hand side, there is a red sign. It's a rotary axis. Then after that, again a rotary axis. Then the end effector, which you see a metal part, it goes up and down, it rotates in 360 degrees. The working envelope is very small, but it is very effective for high-speed applications. This is one of the latest robots. We had used this. The speed of this is unreal. I mean, it can work almost 20 times faster than any articulated robot. This is for the IC or the most of the packaging industries where you have to fill up anything that you see packaged. Most of the times in developed countries, this is the robot that they are using. This is working at speed of application is almost 30 meters per second. At a very, very high speed, it can work. Again, a very, very expensive robot, hardly being used in India, but in US or in Japan, this is most commonly used. This is not a type of robot.
Excuse me, sir. Yes. Sorry to disturb you. In Cartesian, can you just give me an example where what use it is, Cartesian? Everything else you have given examples, but Cartesian exactly where we are using. What type of work do we do with it?
Ma'am, I'll show you a video of that. Just allow me 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes. I'm going to show you a video of Cartesian robot.
All right, thank you.
So this is not a type of robot, first of all. Collaborative robot, they are now coming into the picture big time. There is one company which has from a Denmark, and they have very nicely developed this robot. So these robots are again articulated robots, but they work in collaboration with humans. That means the speed of this robot is very less and their moment of inertia is very less. If a robot just collides with human, there is no issue of, there is not going to be any injury to the human. So that is the advantage of this. Lot of industries in India are preferring this robot because their efficiency is less, their speed is less, but yes, their cost is also less. So this is where industry is moving in a very fast way. Most of the articulated robots are now also coming up with collaborative robots. That means generally any articulated robot will weigh somewhere around 140 to 150 kg. It moves at 20 meter per second. If it collides you, there it is going to cause a lot of damage to human beings, a lot of very serious injuries to human beings. This robot, it's exactly reverse. It has got sensors, it has got torque sensors, overload sensors. As soon as it comes in touch with humans, it will stop immediately. So collaborative robot can be anything. It can be SCARA, it can be Cartesian, it can be articulated. This is just a type of a robot, not a structure of a robot. So what I'll do is I'll show you a few videos which will give you a very clear idea. So since you are asking about the articulated robo, first what I'll do is I'll play the video of articulated robo. Can everyone see a video?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes.
So
Yes,
this
sir.
you see is actually a specifically designed Cartesian robot.
Yes,
Here
sir.
it is used for pick and place application. So the looks wise it can be different, but it has got three axes, X, Y, and Z. You have to program them in a way that it will just obey your instructions. So this is particularly used for pick and place. This is automatic storage and retrieval application. That means the job will be stored onto, uh, kept onto the something that will be picked up by a robot, and again it will be manufactured, and it will again come back to this unit. You can see the axis moving, the X, Y, Z coordinates, they're moving. The Cartesian.
No, sir, I can't see the video.
Can anyone see the video? Is that visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. See the video. It's very clear.
It is visible.
It is visible. It is visible.
So this is the process. So Cartesian robo has done its job. In the Cartesian, again, as I said, you can have a base axis as a rotary axis. So there's some background noise. So this is a specifically designed application depending on a particular customer's requirement or an industrial requirement. So now this is called as y-axis. It is moving in one direction. Generally in Cartesian, people will avoid interpolated motion. Each axis will move at a time. So that avoids the kinematics as well as the inverse kinematics calculations. And there is no issue of the accidents as well. So I'll stop this. I'll go into the new next video. So I'll just show you one application of articulated robot. Just a minute. You can see the next video now.
Yes, sir, we are able to see.
Yes, sir, we are able to see, sir.
So this is the process after the
Sir, video is
Cartesian
not
robot.
visible to me.
There might be some lag in the video sharing, I guess. You'll have to wait for a minute, it might start. So the robot which is moving right now is an articulated robot. This is the standard structure of any articulated robot. There are 6 joints. The one at the end which is going to lift the job, it is called as end effector or the end actuator.
It is visible.
So this is where the payload matters. Now, if you see, the robot is at its stretch. So this particular robot can lift 12 kg, but at this position, it is not going to lift more than 8 kgs. So when we say a robot generally works in tandem with other machines, other RTUs. RTUs are remote terminal units. Anything that performs its work remotely is called as RTU. So generally, they work in collaboration with other machines. So this is a CNC milling machine. So you can integrate their signals together. That means it will wait till the door is opened. Once it gets the signal, it will proceed. So that integration part, robots are very, I mean, nowadays robots are so advanced that there is a very, very less chance of accidents. So now the robot is moving on a linear axis that is called as the 7th axis of a robot. Again, most of the 6-axis articulated robots come with an option of 7th axis, which can be integrated. That movement is a prismatic movement. All these 6 joints are revolute joints. The 7th joint, which is moving right now, is a prismatic. So the entire movement is in joints. There is only revolutionary movement, and you are achieving the position that you want to achieve. That means you can have the movement of your end effector. That means point A to point B will be achieved in a linear movement, but the entire movement, I mean, all joints are having a revolutionary movement.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Sir, this is kinematic motion that the robot is moving in a way.
Yeah, kinematics and inverse kinematics, forward kinematics is actually the back-end application that you want to achieve that you want to calculate for the robot movement.
Okay.
So I'll just show you one more video of this has got nothing to do with the kinematics or the inverse kinematics. This is just to show you how nowadays robots are collaborated along with vision. That means if we are using it for assembly or if we are using it for any very critical applications, how they can be useful. So I'll open that video. This is a small video. So this is an assembly application generally which is used for the piston ring application assemblies and everything. So here the robot is assembling a gasket onto a job. Now you want to check it whether it is assembled properly or not. So you go there, now you'll see a flash, a very quick flash. You see a picture, and in 100 microns, with 100 microns accuracy, you can find out whether it is properly assembled or not.
So the video is stopped. Now it has resumed. Okay.
There is a lag, I guess. We'll have to have the patience because there is a lag. It appears. If you want, I'll replay this video. It's a very short video. So these all functions, these are very advanced functions that nowadays robots can do, and with a lot of with the technology of say IIoT or Industry 4.0 that we call it, all these parameters can be immediately transferred to cloud. Through cloud, you can see it on your mobile as well. So which all parts are accepted or rejected. So now I'll just show you one video of SCARA, then we'll move ahead with the drive systems. So this is a very this is a prototype of a packaging application. So all these things that you see are actually the robots, the pneumatic driven robots, single axis, two axis. If you see, it's a collaboration of cylindrical as well as a Cartesian robot, which is being which is working on pneumatic drives. Anything that operates automatically can be termed as a robot. These are height sensing applications. Again, a robotic application. You want to find out whether the height is properly managed or not. The one which you see right now is a SCARA robot. We'll see the operation as well. Entire system which you see right now is being operated on a pneumatics. So when we move into the drive mechanisms, you can relate to this. So this is a pneumatically driven robot.
Sir, what is the meaning of pneumatics?
Anything that works on air. So pressurized air. This is working, everything is working on a pressurized air circulation.
Okay, thank you.
So now it has calculated the weight of it. So it is 900 grams. So depending on its weight, it is going to either store it or going to pass it on to the next station. So which you see right now in front of you is a SCARA robot. The working envelope of a SCARA robot is very limited. So it is not like an articulated robot. It is very, very limited. And that is the downside of a SCARA robot. Otherwise, speed-wise, SCARA is one of the fastest. Here
Sir, can you give in one example that where these type of robots are used?
SCARA robots?
Yes, sir.
Mostly pick and place applications like these, ma'am. Mostly only the pick and place application, but the reach of SCARA robots cannot be more than 600 mm. That means from point A to point B cannot be more than 600 mm, whereas in articulated you can have it up to 5 meters, 6 meters as well.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So here also what you see, the slide here is generally termed as, I'll show you, it is not moving right now. So yeah, the slide which is moving right, but it is moving on electrical motors. So that is moving with stepper motors with a prismatic joint. So this is also called as a single axis robot. Generally in industry we call it a KK robot, one of the most popularly used slide. There are a lot of n number of applications where these slides are being used. Even in CNC machines also these slides are being used. They're highly accurate. You can achieve an accuracy of 5 microns. So 1 micron is 1000 part of mm. So this is how you achieve the accuracy. With pneumatics, achieving the accuracy beyond 1 mm is very difficult. So that is where you have to move to either hydraulics or electrical drives. So I'll move back to the presentation now. So you have seen the videos of Cartesian, you have seen the videos of articulated as well as the SCARA robots. So now we move on to the drive systems. So what exactly is meant by a drive system? So anything that drives, because we are talking about movement of each axis of a robot. So for movement, we have to drive that. So how do we drive that? There can be an electrical drive system, there can be a hydraulic drive system, or there can be a pneumatic drive system. So in next slides, we'll go into the details of each drive system. So why this drive system is important? So it is actually required to move the links as well as the joints of a robot, determine the speeds of the arm movements, strength of each robot, as well as the performance. Performance in the sense what kind of accuracy you can achieve with that particular drive. Then again, the type of applications that the robot can accomplish. So there are different types of actuators: hydraulics, pneumatics, electrical. So just to clarify, hydraulics is something that is done with oil. So oil is incompressible; it cannot be compressed. So generally when we work with oil, we work at around 70, 80, 90 bar of pressure. With pneumatics is never a reliable system. Only if you want to achieve a movement from A to B, there is no intermediate movement. There is no intermediate position, then you can use pneumatics. But pneumatics comes with a lot of problems. Yes, it is sophisticated, but it comes with a lot of problems because it is compressible. That means if you have a cylinder and if you have to, it is working at 5 bar, you push it with your hands, it might go inside. So that is the thing with the pneumatics. With hydraulics at 70 bar, nothing can happen. Then comes the third part, electrical, which is the most commonly used as well as the most popular drive system. So in electrical, you have servo motors, stepper motors, as well as direct drive motors. Servo motors in any of the industrial robots, I'm not very sure how much we are well known about the stepper motors or servo motors. I don't want to go into the details. Just I'll give you a layman's term. For stepper motors, there is no feedback. That means if I tell someone to do something, if it doesn't do it, I don't have any control over it. Servo motors comes with a feedback. That means I tell someone to do something and then I check whether he has done it or not. If he has not done it, I'll tell him again. So that is what servo motors do. In industry, in any industrial application, 90% of the times where you want accuracy, people prefer servo motors. Stepper technology is nowadays obsolete, and I don't think after 10 years we'll be seeing any stepper motors or the direct drive motors. Servo is where the industry is moving. Most of the robots like KUKA, Fanuc, ABB, these are the giant companies which are manufacturing robots. They're using only servo motors. So we'll go into the details of hydraulic drive system. Generally, hydraulics is used where the payload capacity is very high. So when you see a crane on the roads, that is being operated on hydraulics. That is the only thing you can do. With servos or with pneumatics, you cannot do it. Pneumatics is impossible. Servos, the costing becomes very high. With hydraulics, you can have a huge speed, tremendous speed as compared to servos. But the downside of it is oil leakage is a big problem, and sometimes the oil can be inflammable as well. It requires more floor space. So those are the downsides of a hydraulic system. So this, what you see here, where we have mentioned as linear actuator, although it is a linear actuator with a clavish joint, it is providing a rotary movement. So the two cables kind of thing which are coming out, they are for the inflow and outflow of oil. That means oil flows at the top, then oil from the bottom will come out. It is P to T. I'll not go into the details, but this is how a hydraulic system works. For that, you need a servo valve. Don't get confused between servo motor and a servo ball. Servo ball is something which achieves the accuracy for oil flow. And this is the oil circuit from which you send a pressurized oil into the valve, then into the cylinder. At the same time, the oil which is coming out from the other end flows into the reservoir. Then pneumatic drive systems. You have already seen a pneumatic application in that video. That entire system was working on pneumatics. Most of the bottling plants, like we drink Coke or Pepsi, they are being operated on pneumatics because there is no payload capacity as such. Most of the bottling plants are very packaging industries. They are using pneumatics as their drive system. Very small, sophisticated. There is very less danger of accidents happening because even if there is huge leakage, what will happen? Just air will flow into the air. So there is no big issue with that. Generally, the pressure at which pneumatic systems offer, most of the cases, is less than 10 bars, so which is not dangerous for human beings. The biggest issue with this is chances of drifting under load as air is compressible. That means if there is any issue of any external load which has been applied intentionally or unintentionally, it might damage the entire workflow. That is the biggest issue with pneumatics. Pneumatics is one of the lowest cost mechanisms. So generally, this is the first step in any industrial automation. People start with pneumatics, then to hydraulics, then to electricals. We have already seen this. Electrical drive systems. This is one of the most popular and one of the most, by volume, one of the most installed drive mechanism. Electrical. Any CNC machine, any robots, any gantries are nowadays operated by electrical driving systems, which are readily available. The technology is well absorbed in the at least in our country, and it can be very well serviced as well. It is well suited for rotational as well as linear joints. You have a lot of mechanisms like ball screws or lead screws or rack pinions through which you can transfer the rotary motion into a linear motion. So that is also very proven. Small robots and precise application, there is no other way than electrical drive systems. You can achieve highest accuracy with electricals. So this is how it works. So the position controller, most of the robots come with a small unit which we call as a controller. Then the speed controller, then the current controller. So current is actually directly related with the torque of a motor. Depending on the load, it will control the current as well as the torque. AC is a servo amplifier. Then goes the motor. Tacho generator, T, what you see at the end of the picture, it actually finds out the exact speed. Speed is very important to achieve the final position. Speed as well as acceleration, very important. Encoder is the positioning device. It will find out the exact positioning of a servo motor. As I said, it's a feedback loop. If my motor has overshoot by say 10 microns, this encoder will give a feedback to my controller, and that motor will be brought back by 10 microns. So that is the entire feedback loop. Yeah, so this actually concludes my presentation. So it seems that you there are a lot of questions. So we'll open for a question answer session. If you have noted down the slide number, you tell me so I can go back to the slide.
So the robotic surgery, which kind of robots are used there in the robotic surgery in for medicine, field of medicine?
That is actually a research topic. I have never had a privilege of working with the surgery, so I can't tell you that. I'm not very sure what exactly they're using robotics for. But most of the automatic machines as well nowadays, they call it as robots. So I'm not very sure about that.
And the ventilators where they used, are they the robots or
I don't think it's a machine. A ventilator should be termed as a machine because it's an equipment.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Any questions?
Just one question, sir. If I have to explain kinematics, I can say it's the classification of robots based on their movement, how they are moving. Based on that, we are classifying the robots. Is that what kinematics is?
Ma'am, kinematics actually the movement of joints of a robot to achieve a particular position.
Okay, so all these types of robots that you said, articulated, Cartesian, etc. So basically, it is about their movements only, no?
Exactly. So my Cartesian robot will have a different movement structure to achieve point A from point B. My articulated robot will have a different movement structure. As I said, you can achieve linear motion of your tool. Tool is the end effector. You can make that tool move in a linear way. Linear in the sense in a line movement by having a rotational movement of all 6 axes. That is your kinematics. How you want to do it. So you move J1 by 1 degree, J2 by 2 degree, but your end effector will move by 1 mm in a linear direction in x-axis. That is your kinematics.
Okay,
so depending on the structure of a robot, it can be SCARA, it can be Cartesian, it can be articulated. Your joint movement will change. It can be either rotational, it can be linear, it can be prismatic. So depending on that, you are going to change the movement of each link as well as the joint to achieve the end position of your end effector.
Sir, you also showed that video of that articulate robot moving around. Then you mentioned 7th axis also.
Yeah.
So how many axes are we using normally? Is it possible to use more than 6? Was that one using 7, 8? Like how high can you go with that? Or it's only 6 do you need?
Oh, standard robots come with 6 axes. Okay, but then I can mount them on a gantry. I can mount them upside down as well. Most of the robots have a capacity to get mounted upside down. So then I can have 3-4 more axes as well. But a standard robot from a manufacturer comes with 6 axes. I can integrate it interpolation. That means a movement of number of axes in coordination with each other. That is limited to 12 as of now. It might increase next year. I don't know. As of now, you can move 12 axes together.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Very good afternoon, sir.
Question on that
good afternoon,
frame, sir.
Yes, go ahead, sir, please.
Sir, can you go to the slides, please, sir?
Sir, I want to ask that which programming language we basically use in these robots for programming and all.
Sir, robot, that's an entirely different. Just to give you an idea, I'll tell you, nowadays there is no robot programming language. We follow the teaching method. So if I have to give you an example, Fanuc has a programming language called as Carl, K-A-E-R-L, Carl. But we do not use it. That era has entirely changed. We use the teaching points. Teaching points in the sense we move the robot from point A to point B and we teach it. Then B to C, we teach it. So next time we run the program, it will follow the same direction that we have taught it. So this is called the teaching mechanism. Most of the robots that I've seen, KUKA, Fanuc, ABB, Mitsubishi, any big robot generally follow a teaching mechanism. They come with a pendant. We call it as a teach pendant. So all you have to do is enter the point. It is as easy as any even 6th-7th standard student can do it. Very easy nowadays.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Sir, regarding the coordinate frames, will it be the combination of coordinate frames, or you'll just use one reference frame to identify the coordinates? Sir?
Yeah, that's a very good question actually. So what happens is generally when a robo is working, programming the robo becomes very difficult. So if I have a job which the size of it is say 100 by 100 by 200, then I want to program it from 0, 0. So each robo will be taking care of say 3, 4, 5 jobs. So I cannot have a coordinate of say 600, 800, 900 for a particular job. So what I do is for each tool or each workpiece, I define a new coordinate system. In my programming, I call that work coordinate system. So work coordinate system 1, work coordinate system 2, work coordinate system 3. Like that, I call it, and then according to it, I program say 0, 10, 50, whatever I want. So you can have n number of coordinate systems there. Tool coordinate system, work coordinate system. There is no limit to it.
Yeah. So, but if the robot is moving, sir. So if the base is moving, so we cannot use the robot coordinate frame, no, sir. Is it possible?
They all are interrelated. So in robot, inside the if you go into the programming language, it is following a particular only one coordinate system, which is the robot coordinate system. It is moving in that. It is just showing you differently. They are all interrelated. That means we call it as reference coordinate system and work coordinate system. So they are interrelated with each other. There is no actual change in it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Excuse me, sir. Sir, if this type of topic is to be taught to the children for grade 9 and 10, so which type of miniature programs can be shown to them so that they can be understood for them easily?
Ma'am, to give you an idea, there are n number of actually application videos which are available on YouTube, which is actually, I mean, freely available on YouTube. My always suggestion to even to undergrad students is to just to make them aware of what all things can be done with a robot. There is a big perception in our minds that robot is used only for very critical applications. That is not the case. You can start with the welding process, because welding, most of the students, they have seen with their eyes, they have seen in their houses, or I don't know, in the close by areas, they have seen the welding. So how a robot can weld it? Because programming language is way out of their scope. If they get to know that this is where I can use a robot, a travelator is a robot, anything I can manufacture a very simple mechanism, 2-axis or 3-axis, with a slide which I showed you, they should be at least aware about that. That way they'll develop the acumen to learn more about it.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Is there any other doubts? Kindly.
No, sir. Thank you.
So I guess
So there is no other. Hello.
Yes.
Hello, participant. Kindly.
Excuse me, sir. Can you please share your videos in the group?
Sharing videos, they are a little big. I'm not very sure whether they can be shared or not, but I'll try my level best. Now I'll send you a link for that.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
And sir, this PPT will be shared?
Yeah, I can share that. No problem.
Fine. Thank you so much.
Is there any other doubts left? Or shall we?
No, sir. Thank you.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello. Actually, sir, I wanted to note that digital circuit which you have shown to us. So there we have used the encoder and the multiplexer which we have just used. So this much is required only for the robot, or the different flip-flop because the small children, those who just move or want to get the idea. So that is quite what tough for them. So that much is only required.
Sorry, I didn't get your question. Could you please repeat? You're not very clearly audible.
Now I'm audible, sir?
Yeah, you are now. Please.
Okay. I just wanted to know, sir, the digital circuit which you have just shown to me now.
Digital
that
circuit?
Multiplexer. Yes. Multiplexer was the encoders were there.
Oh, yes, yes. Okay, yeah.
Yes. So this is means enough for the small children for robotics, or they need any flip-flop also?
See, actually, this is a very simplified circuit. If I show you a picture of a controller, it is actually very, very critical. This is what just a simplified version of it.
Because the controller we are just using or 8051, so that will cover all the things, control all the things. So we don't need, I think, that flip-flop. I think.
Ma'am, actually what happens is this works on a PLC. Most of the robot controllers work on PLC. There is an integrated PLC inside the controller, and that PLC is very, very advanced. There is a PID loop as well. As far as I know, they have a PID loop as well. So, I mean, this was just for the explanation. This is no way related with the actual controller. If you see a actual picture of a controller, it is very complex.
Yes. Okay, sir.
Sir, good afternoon, sir. You mentioned that SCARA is the speed is the fastest with SCARA, but still articulated robots are more in use than SCARA. Why? What is the drawback of SCARA?
SCARA, the working envelope is very small. The height, because generally it works below its end effector. If you see the overall structure of a SCARA, it will work below its end effector. That means it cannot reach out of its limit. So the maximum working envelope is 400 by around 400. 400 by 400. So that is very less. With articulated, you can reach up to 4.5 meters.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Sir, yes, sir. Sir, when sir was explaining, he said that most of the robots are they make use of teaching mechanism.
Yeah.
So for my understanding, I'm just asking. So if you are, will it be how to say? Be designing it for the industry as per their requirement, or is there a standard designs for these types of robots? So accordingly, you'll ask them to leave the space and set up those setups in the industries.
Yeah, actually what happens is, if I understand your questions correctly, you are asking how a teach pendant looks and whether it is the same for everyone or you have to design it particularly for a particular customer. Is
yes.
That, yeah. What I'll do is I'll start one video, I'll show you so that you'll get a very clear idea of how a teach pendant looks like and how the teaching is done. So just give me a moment, please.
Yes.
Yeah. I'll just go back. Can you see the video now?
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'll pause it. Yeah. You see the person holding that particular thing in his hand. It is called as a teach pendant.
Okay.
It has an 8-inch screen HMI, but that particular HMI you can design the way you want it. If you want to have a particular set of operations mentioned then you can have it. You can design it. But this is all you will get with a robot, and this is much more than sufficient to carry out the entire scope of applications of a robot.
Okay, so that the robot is
This
not
one you
meant
see
to do
on
for
the-
only one particular task. So it is capable of it has some 0 to sorry, say for example some 10 tasks. If this one robot is capable of doing, we can according to our requirement we can program from any of those 10.
Yes, correct.
In the coordinates.
Yeah.
So
And
first
there
time
was
he
some-
will set up the positions, and he will actually, it's like manually he's setting up for the first time, and when
Yes.
it is all set up, you can just save it. So furtherly from the next time it starts working on its own.
Yes, yes, very correct. So this is called as the teaching. So they teach it for the first time and it will keep doing the same thing with an accuracy designed by the manufacturer. So the controller that I guess I had a question previously, how a control looks like. The one at the bottom of the screen right now is a controller. It is as simple as that, but inside it is very complex. And then one more question I had received of how about the coordinate system. So if you see the aluminum plates right now in silver color, so I'll have a coordinate system for each plate. That way it becomes very easy for me to program it. I cannot have a world coordinate system for all the jobs here. I can have a coordinate system for each plate. So that becomes very easy.
So sir, in that teaching mechanism, the device which the person is having in his hand, he'll be mentioning it with what to say, how he'll be mentioning the inputs for the robots through that.
That would be a big, I mean, that's a very big field, sir. And there are a number of, every robot comes with inputs and outputs, okay? 24-volt inputs and outputs. You can switch it on, you can switch it off. So what you see right now, it is open.
Yeah.
So how does it open it? You have to call for a solenoid valve to open. Solenoid valve gives the direction to the airflow. Then the gripper opens. Then this particular vise gets clamped. So everything he has to write there. It's a programming method. Programming in the sense PLC programming method.
Okay. Yeah,
Every teach pendant will have a different mechanism for that. There is no particular language as such. Each manufacturer will have. So you have to call that particular solenoid number and you have to open it. Make 1 to 0, 0 to 1. It will open, close.
Oh, they'll have set of instructions for the respective thing. So it will respond open, close, move. In this particular angle, it is something like that. Similar to something called as a turtle language, which was there in the
No,
computers?
no. It's a PLC language. It's a very
No,
basic
just for an
PLC.
example, comparing because PLC is it's they make use of logic gates.
Yes, this
for
is a logic.
designing.
Correctly put. This is logic. You have to decide, give a logic to it.
Okay.
That means you have input like I 0.1 or output like Q 0.0. You switch it on, you switch it off. You switch it on, you switch it off.
Okay.
So you have to write that in the logic.
Yeah, those numbers are created by the company as a code so that the machine responds accordingly.
No. They are designed by the people like us, the system integrators. So company gives you a robot with the inputs and outputs. That PLC you have to connect, you have to integrate with your system, and then you have to decide that.
So if in future, if they want to make some changes in the either in the environment of working environment or with the working process of the robot also, with the help of this PLC teach mechanism, it is possible.
Yes. That is entirely flexible. Any PLC for that matter is completely flexible. You can change it the way you want it. So inside robot, there is a PLC. You can change it the way you want it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Sir, can you tell us, like pneumatic pressurized gas creation, what type of gases can be used to create that, sir?
It's actually atmospheric air. There is a compressor there is a motor. So you fill that air in a receiver. You keep on filling it up to a particular pressure. So it is actually atmospheric air. There is no other gases.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions?
Thank you, sir.
I guess any questions related with the presentation today, or can we conclude this?
Sir, I have one.
Yes, we can conclude it.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir. Actually, I want to ask a very general question that in Indian context, like where like our country basically using these robots, like which areas? Because we don't have enough knowledge about this. So can you give some light on this? That in which areas basically in our country robots are nowadays are in use?
We are mostly using it for packaging industry. We are using it for even automobile is one of the most popular industries. Robots are being used in automobile for a long time now. Then the semiconductor industry, the pick and place applications like press parts. Just to give an application, recently we concluded one project with Alfa Laval where they had a job size of 6 meters by 6 meters, which was not possible for a human being to pick it up. They needed 4 people to lift it. So that is where they are using now. So there are very generic applications. Now people are moving into welding as well. Welding is one of the most popular. Even recently we installed in one of the vendors of Bajaj, where they are welding the top portion of an engine assembly with a robot. So it's a very generic application.
Thank you, sir.
It was really it was wonderful, sir. Thank you for so much.
Sincerely, thank you to all those who are.
Appreciated.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Very informative session.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for sharing
Thank you, sir.
the information.
Thank you, sir,
Yes.
very much.